Today is the 13th day of the month of Cheshvan. We are beginning a new chapter, chapter 11, discussing the laws of Mezuzah. Today we'll be doing paragraphs 1 through 11. Paragraph 1. There is a mitzvah to put on the doorposts of our home a mezuzah. Now, a few things to note about this mezuzah. First of all, the mezuzah is not the fancy case that you might have. The real mezuzah is the scroll that's inside the case. On that scroll is written 2 paragraphs from the Torah, both discussing this mitzvah of mezuzah. The first paragraph also talks about the mitzvah to love God. The second paragraph talks about the idea of reward and punishment. Our actions have consequences. When we do the right thing, there are positive consequences. When we make mistakes, there are negative consequences. Both of those paragraphs also mention the mitzvah of mezuzah, and therefore those are the paragraphs that are on the scroll that's wrapped up inside the case that we put on the doorpost of our homes. Now, something else to note is that we don't only put mezuzah on the front door of our homes, we should be putting a mezuzah on almost every door inside our homes and even our workplaces as well. There are a bunch of exceptions, and there's a lot of rules about which type of doorways need a mezuzah, which types of rooms require a mezuzah, but the rule of thumb is if there's a doorway in a room, it needs a mezuzah. And as we learn through this chapter, we're going to see cases where a mezuzah isn't actually required. Already in paragraph 1, the Cheshvan mentions an exception, which is if you have a doorway that's primarily used to unload deliveries, it's not meant to walk through, it's some sort of warehouse door that is only open when deliveries are coming in, but it's not a door for people to walk through, that doorway would not require a mezuzah. I don't think this is standard in most homes, but this might be standard in a place of business or a warehouse. Paragraph 2. If you have a courtyard which has a doorway, now not just a gate, you have to have, we're going to see later on, you need 2 doorposts and also a lintel that goes across from one doorpost to the next. But if your yard has such an entrance, that entrance requires a mezuzah. If you have a walled city, the doorway of the walled city would require a mezuzah. Again, not so common in our cities here in America, but you do have that in Israel. If not walled cities, at least walled neighborhoods that would require a mezuzah. The most famous one is the old city of Jerusalem. When you walk through Shar Yafa, Jaffa Gate, in the old city of Jerusalem, there's a nice huge mezuzah on the side of the doorway. Paragraph 3. On which side of the doorway do we place the mezuzah? So we're supposed to place the mezuzah on the right doorpost. What's considered the right doorpost? If it's the entrance of the house, it's pretty easy. When you walk into the house, you put it on the right side. If you have inner rooms of the house, you do on the right side when you're walking into the room. Now, this is true whether the owner of the house is right-handed or left-handed, it always goes on the right side of the doorway. Paragraph 4. Very often you have a doorway between 2 rooms and it's not clear what's considered the outer room, what's considered the inner room. What's considered the entranceway into the inner room? Do you put the mezuzah on this side of the doorway or that side of the doorway? If there's only one doorway to the room, it's pretty clear. When you enter the room, the mezuzah goes on the right side of the doorway. But if there's 2 doorways, it could get very confusing. These could get very complicated figuring out which side is the right side of the doorway, and therefore call a rabbi to have him come take a look at your home. Paragraph 5. Where on the doorpost do we place the mezuzah? The mezuzah is supposed to be placed on the bottom of the top third of the doorway. So you take the measurement of the height of the doorway, you divide it into 3, a third of the way down, you place it right above that line. It really could be anywhere within the top third, but it's supposed to be on the bottom of the top third. One other thing is that it's not allowed to be in the top tefach, hand's breadth, approximately 3.5 inches of the top of the doorpost. If it was in the incorrect spot on the doorpost, you have to take it off and put it back on in the correct spot. If initially you put it too low, then when you put it on, you make another blessing. If initially you put it too high, within the top 3.5 inches of the doorpost, then when you adjust it, you do not make a new blessing. Sometimes you have a doorpost which is very thick. In that case, it's supposed to be in the outer 3.5 inches of the doorpost. However, if for some reason it's further into the doorpost, it still is a valid mezuzah, and you can leave it over there. Paragraph 6. So, okay, you got your parchment, it's rolled up. Usually when you buy a mezuzah nowadays, it comes already pre-rolled, and even like they put a little bit of plastic wrap around it to protect it. You have your mezuzah case, you put the rolled up parchment into the mezuzah case, and now you attach it to the doorpost. You have to make sure that it's properly, fully attached to the doorpost. If you're using double-sided tape, that's fine. Make sure it's attached securely. If you're using nails, you need a nail on top and on bottom. If you have just a nail on top and it's hanging, that's not a kosher way or a valid way of putting up the mezuzah. In terms of the direction that the mezuzah is supposed to be, it's supposed to be slanted in with the top part slanted towards the inside of the house or the inside of the room. If it's a very skinny doorway that doesn't have enough room to have the mezuzah slanted, then you can have the mezuzah just vertical straight up. Paragraph 7. Before hanging up the mezuzah, we're supposed to make a blessing. You can find this blessing in the Art Scroll Siddur, in the Art Scroll Prayer Book on page 226 on the top. We say, Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam. Blessed are you, God, Master of the universe, Asher kedishanu mitzvosav, who sanctified us with his commandments, v'tzivanu l'kboa mezuzah, and commanded us to put up a mezuzah. After that, we immediately hang up the mezuzah. If we have a lot of mezuzahs to put up, you only need to make one blessing, and then you put up all the mezuzahs. You should make sure, however, not to interrupt from one mezuzah to the next. If a mezuzah fell off the doorpost, then when you put it back up, you need to make another blessing. If, however, you took down a mezuzah because you wanted to get the scroll checked, then you do not need to make another blessing when you put it back up. Paragraph 8 discusses an unusual case. I'm not sure if it's practical nowadays, but just in case, I'll share the case with you. Says the Cheshvan that sometimes you have a big doorway that has within it a small doorway. There's like a big entranceway, and part of the entranceway opens up a smaller door. So if you're bringing in a car, I don't know, like maybe a garage door, the whole door goes up if you're bringing some sort of vehicle. If a person's walking through, they could just open up a smaller door that's contained within the bigger door. So it says the Cheshvan something very interesting. In this scenario, you have two doorways. You have the larger doorway for the larger door, and that larger doorway is really a doorway, a doorpost for the smaller door. So you need two mezuzahs over there because of that. Again, I can't think of a very practical example nowadays. I'm not familiar with any doorways like that, but if you are familiar with them or have seen them, then I'd love to hear about it. Let me know. Paragraph 9. Let's say you live in a place where there's a concern that somebody might steal the mezuzah from your front door. What should you do then? So says the Cheshvan Aruch, what you could do is you could hollow out a little bit in the doorpost of your house and stick the mezuzah literally inside the doorpost. You hollow out a section and stick the mezuzah inside the wall over there. Then you plaster it over, and hopefully that will protect your mezuzah. It does have to be clear that the mezuzah is there, so it does have to be some sort of marking or indentation so people know the mezuzah is there. And also the mezuzah has to be within 3.5 inches, a tefach, a hand's breadth of the edge of the doorpost. It can't be more than 3.5 inches deep. If there's even a concern in that case it might be stolen, then you could put the mezuzah inside the house right next to the doorpost. Again, it has to be within 3.5 inches of the edge of the doorpost. But that's really the worst case scenario. Best thing is if the mezuzah is sitting on the doorpost. Next, if you hollow out a hole and stick it inside the door, inside the wall. And the third best option is sticking on the inside of the house on the doorpost. Paragraph 10. How big does a room have to be to require mezuzah? Does every little closet need a mezuzah on it? So the answer is no. In order for a room to require mezuzah, it has to be 4 amos, cubits by 4 amos, 4 cubits. This comes out to approximately 7 feet by 7 feet. A room that is smaller than that would not require mezuzah. Now here's the question. When we say 7 feet by 7 feet, does that mean literally you have to have at least a wall of 7 feet and at least a perpendicular wall also 7 feet? Or do we mean the square feet of 49 feet? For example, if you have a room which is 3.5 feet deep, but it's 14 feet wide, it has an area of 49 square feet, would that room require a mezuzah? There's differing of opinions about that, and therefore we do have to put up mezuzah, but we don't make a blessing when we put it up. The best case scenario is to be putting up mezuzah in another room, and like we said earlier, you can make one blessing for a lot of mezuzahs, so put up a blessing on a mezuzah that requires one for sure, make the blessing on that one, and then put up the mezuzah on this room that's 49 square feet, but not 7 by 7, and it will be included in the initial blessing. If you don't have another mezuzah to put up, then you put up this mezuzah without making a blessing. Paragraph 11. What is considered a halachic doorway to require a mezuzah? So it has to have on each side a doorpost, and on top of it, a lintel, something going across from one side to the next. The doorposts have to be at least 10 tfachim, 10 handbreadths tall. This comes out to approximately 3 feet tall. So any 3 feet tall doorway would require a mezuzah. Now, even if there's not a proper doorpost, it's just a cutout in the wall of a room. There's a cutout along which is a clear entranceway, clear doorway. That there's no wood around it or stone around it. It's just the wall cut out in the shape of a doorway. That would require a mezuzah as long as it has 2 doorposts and a thing going across. Now, this next case the Cheshvan talks about is a little hard to describe. I'll try describing it. It really needs a picture. Imagine you have 2 rooms that are adjacent to each other, and they share a wall going straight through from one room to the next. Now, halfway through this double room, there's a wall jutting out, perpendicular to this wall that's shared, and that wall comes out halfway through the room, and it has a doorway going to this joint wall. I know this doesn't sound very clear, but it comes out that on one side of this doorway, you have just a straight wall. On the other side, you have a doorway and you have a top. So it comes out there's one doorpost and a top. I'll share a picture. I'll share a picture of what this looks like. So in this scenario, do you need to put a mezuzah on there? So the answer is if the side which doesn't have a doorpost is the right side, no mezuzah is needed. If the side which doesn't have a doorpost is the left side, so the right side does have a doorpost, then in that scenario you put up mezuzah, but you don't make a blessing on it. Again, I'm sorry, I know this is a confusing case. I'll share a picture which hopefully will make it a bit more clear. This concludes today's episode. Have a great day and see you tomorrow.